There are a few running backs I need to be moving up here, and also we're going to go way deeper with this list. We're going to talk about pretty much everybody you would consider starting, except at the very top end, because you already know, yes, you are starting CMC, Jefferson, Tyree, Diggs, Adams, Keenan, Chase, Pollard. If you were to come out to a live stream and ask me if you were going to start Jamar Chase or not, I'm going to smack you up on the back of the head and go, what the hell are you talking about, my man? Of course, start your studs. Everybody knows this. Maybe, just maybe, we have someone coming out and asking if they should start our next tier. Guys like Bijan, Kenneth Walker, Travis Etienne, AJ Brown, and CeeDee Lamb. Yes, you start Bijan Robinson, I understand. Wasn't great this past week. The man's going to bounce back. I actually don't even mind going and taking the more than 14 rushing attempts on Underdog Fantasy this week. If you're looking at Bijan, this is a team that wants to run the ball over and over and over again. He's involved as a pass catcher. He may be the most talented running back in the NFL outside of a Christian McCaffrey. Kenneth Walker, our next guy, absolute stud. Yes, Zach Charbonnet is going to expand his role in this offense. Zach Charbonnet will be used in both the 2-minute drill as well as on third downs. But that has not stopped Kenneth Walker from being great. It's a good matchup going up against the Giants as well. Etienne, our next guy at 11, is a running back that I've been trying to get everybody to trade for. I think the offense will be better. He's extremely talented. He's getting work on all 3 downs. He's getting involved more as a receiver, as we were really hoping he would this season. I'm excited about him. AJ Brown at 12. I mean, I understand some people got scared off of AJ Brown. I know a lot of people in the flock were actually able to buy low on him last week, which is very exciting. Still locked and loaded stud wide receiver we play every week. And then CeeDee Lamb at 13. The reason we're going to have Lamb behind AJ Brown here is Lamb does have a tougher matchup going up against the New England Patriots, where we haven't seen a lot of passing volume in this Dallas Cowboys offense either. Now, I do expect that Lamb is still a better wide receiver long-term than AJ Brown in a full PPR format. Just don't love the matchup going up against the Pats. Now, our next tier, we will have Olave, Waddle, Jacobs, and Saquon Barkley. If you're looking at Chris Olave, this is a wide receiver that's had double-digit targets pretty much every single week this season. Will be interesting if we get Jameis Winston under center for the New Orleans Saints this week. I'm excited about Olave regardless. Then with Jalen Waddle, he is going to be playing in the highest scoring game of the week. You'll see in these rankings later on, I want to start as many Buffalo Bills, as many Miami Dolphins as I possibly can. I mean, this is going to be a shootout. This is going to be an explosive game. Should be the most fun game to watch this week. And obviously, the Dolphins went out there and dropped 70 points the week prior. Now, Josh Jacobs will be our next running back. And I understand maybe we are a little too aggressive on Josh Jacobs here. But ultimately, this is a running back that's still seeing every snap, still seeing every single touch in this backfield. And it's a much better matchup going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Saquon Barkley will be our next RB at 17. Now, of course, I'm going to be giving y'all a ton of injury updates, right? I mean, I will be live streaming on Saturday. I'll be live streaming on Sunday, giving every single injury update that there is. So please just make sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss out on those. I am operating under the assumption currently that Saquon Barkley is going to be playing, but it's frustrating that he plays the Monday night game. So we're going to have to keep tracks on this, just because if he were to be a surprise inactive, you may not have a backup plan that you can actually pivot over to. And then other side note, I am operating under the assumption right now that Austin Eckler will not be playing this weekend. So our next running back will be Joshua Kelly. Okay, I'm joking. We're not going down the Joshua Kelly road again. But our next player will be Devonta Smith. I want to start him. Yes, he disappointed this past week, but we've said it before. We'll say it again. Devonta Smith, AJ Brown, these will be volatile wide receivers, right? One week it'll be a Smith week. The next week it will be a Brown week. But nonetheless, at the end of the season, both these guys should provide you a ton of production overall, and you should be excited about these players and embrace the natural volatility this position brings. Now, Derrick Henry at 19 is a running back that is slowly but surely falling down these rankings. We have seen 2 weeks now this season where Tajee Spears has had more snaps than Derrick Henry. This offense looks horrible. I mean, hell, the overall efficiency in this backfield is going to be at a very, very low mark if you just consider the fact that it's one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, and Derrick Henry's not catching the ball out of the backfield. So, I mean, we weren't in love with Henry coming into the season. Not a super exciting spot either. Now, our next 2 RBs are seeing literally every single snap, every single touch out of their backfields. Kyren Williams is like the only running back that's even involved in Los Angeles. It's crazy. Kyren Williams has a larger role in Los Angeles than any other running back has in the NFL right now. You can almost say the same thing about Zach Moss in Indy. Now, do I think that these are like elite talents? By no means. Do I think so? Now, do I think that at the running back position, ultimately it's driven by volume and opportunity and not necessarily talent when we're looking for fantasy points? Yes, I do. So I think you have to, and I repeat, have to start Kyren Williams as well as Zach Moss. Now, I will say rest of season, I definitely prefer Williams, just knowing that you have the outside chance that you are in a spot that Jonathan Taylor comes back 2 weeks from now, where it will be difficult for us to consistently rely on Zach Moss. Now, going over to our next guy, we will be looking at James Cook. James Cook, we're going to be aggressive in these rankings because, as we've mentioned, we want to go through and we want to get in as many of these Bills, as many of these Dolphins players as we possibly can. That includes James Cook. It's a little frustrating that James Cook does not have the role in the red zone at the moment. But nonetheless, I mean, if that changes one way or another, you could see some touchdown upside. Now, as we drop down to our next tier, I do want to give a shout out. You actually have a special pick'em going on Underdog Fantasy right now. Kenny Pickett more than less than half a passing yard this weekend. If you want to check that out or any of our favorite pick'ems, my favorite pick'em right now is going to be Drake London for fewer than 50.5 receiving yards over on Underdog Fantasy. You can find that link in the description. Find it in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK. You're going to be getting a 100% deposit match up to $500 with the new Underdog account. Plus, you're going to be getting our updated rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, you will be getting that Kenny Pickett special pick'em more than less than half a total yard. Find that link in the description and the comment section. Now, our next guy, Raheem Mostert, is the #1 overall scoring player in fantasy right now. So it does seem crazy that we have him this low. It does seem crazy that, I mean, he is currently the 23rd player for us. But ultimately, it's a tough matchup going up against Buffalo, where Devon Achane, we'll look at him later on in these rankings, but may continue to expand his role. And I don't know, we're probably too low on him. And you know what? Let's move him to the tier above. Let's move him to the tier above with DeAndre Swift. And Swift will be our next back with DeAndre Swift. I mean, looks elite in Philadelphia. Now, some of the same issues that you have with James Cook are the same issues that you have with Swift, and that you are going to see a lot of the rushing touchdowns go to the quarterback in Philadelphia. You've already seen that over the past 2 weeks with Jalen Hurts, but it's the best offensive line in the NFL. It's one of the most run-heavy teams in the NFL as well. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will be going Joe Mixon. With Mixon, very tough matchup going up against Tennessee. I think if you look at our rest of season rankings, we may have him ahead of some of the running backs that are ahead of him currently in these rankings. It's just very difficult this week against the Titans. And then our next 3 wide receivers will all be in about the same range. We have Ridley, Amari, and Puka. Now, Amari has been the most productive wide receiver of the past 2 weeks. Puka is leading the NFL in targets right now. And Calvin Ridley has been disappointing. But I do expect that we get the Trevor Lawrence bounce back for this Jacksonville Jaguars offense and Calvin Ridley overall. It's not a horrendous matchup going up against the Atlanta Falcons. If you wanted to put Puka Nacua higher than this, if you wanted to rank him as high as 18, I'm not going to fault you for it at all. I just know that a lot of us were able to go through and trade him last week for guys like Chris Olave, for someone like A.J. Brown, which was very exciting. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will have Michael Pittman. With Michael Pittman, this is a wide receiver that has been absolutely crushing it. I am excited to see what we get from this offense when you actually can have Anthony Richardson healthy for an entire game and what the passing volume looks like. The matchup against the Rams isn't great. The Rams have had a pretty good defense as of late. The Colts do currently sit with an implied team total of 23.5. Now, our next 2 wide receivers will be Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel. Now, interesting in that both wide receivers are dealing with injuries, so these will be guys that I have to continuously update with on Saturday and Sunday, so just make sure you're subscribed. The last data point that we got at the time of this recording was Brandon Aiyuk was practicing, Deebo Samuel was not practicing. So I think based off that, we have to have Aiyuk ahead of Deebo. In reality, they're about in the same tier. It's up to you. If they both play, you probably both play them. Where right now, the 49ers have an implied team total of 29 points. Should be the highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. Now, DK Metcalf will be our next guy. With Metcalf going up against the Giants, pretty good matchup, right? Not too worried about these Giants DBs. Now, I am on alert to see if JSN's going to be able to expand his role. I mean, it seems like every time JSN gets on the field, I mean, he is drawing separation. He looks pretty damn good. It's just, as of now, you don't have Jackson Smith-Njigba with a noticeable role in the Seattle Seahawks wide receiver room. Alvin Kamara will be our next player at 33. With Kamara, I think that he will probably rather have Derek Carr in at quarterback than Jameis. Obviously, Jameis isn't going to be a quarterback that checks the ball down and plays it safe very often. But nonetheless, still very excited about Alvin Kamara, where you have no Jamal Williams in this offense. And obviously, in a full BBR format, he can rack up reception volume. Now, we have Ramondre Stevenson, Rachaad White, Brian Robinson directly after this. None of these RBs have a great matchup. I mean, all of these RBs are kind of must-start guys regardless, just based off of volume, especially if you look at someone like Ramondre Stevenson, right? I feel like this is the player that we get the most questions regarding. And with Ramondre Stevenson, I understand he has been frustrating. I understand this Pats offense is very bad. Their implied team total is only at 17.5 points this week. They're going up against the Dallas Cowboys. But at the same time, when you have the receiving volume that he does in a full BBR format, you kind of have to start him. Now, going down to our next tier, T. Higgins looked horrendous on Monday night. But this is a matchup against Tennessee where every wide receiver has done well, where we know the Tennessee Titans have a great rush defense. They do not have a great secondary, so you can attack the Titans through the air. Now, the reason we're not going to have T. Higgins higher than this is not because he dropped the ball on Monday night. That issue is going to get sorted out relatively easily. I'm not worried about drops. I know they stand out when you're watching the game, but in reality, I've always said I would rather my wide receiver get open, draw the target, and drop the ball than rather never get targeted at all. What I'm more so worried about is just Joe Burrow's health. I mean, we've said it over and over again, but it's not like Burrow wins one game and then all of a sudden, the fairy godmother comes down and goes, bada boop, bada bang, your ankle is healed. No, Joe Burrow's still dealing with the calf strain. So, I think we have to be a little bit hesitant, even though I do like the matchup. Now, Evans will be our next guy. Tough matchup going up against the New Orleans Saints. We know Evans has historically struggled. And on top of this, if you are looking at it, Mike Evans has scored 75% of the touchdowns in Tampa so far this season. I do think that this comes back down to earth a little bit. Now, our next running back will be James Conner. James Conner, a considerable amount of volume week in and week out, right? Now, the issue that you have with James Conner is not necessarily the running back, but it's more so the offense and the matchup. You can kind of overlook the offense. They go out there and they drop 28 points back-to-back weeks here. But you're going up against the 49ers. We know this 49ers defense is one of the best in the NFL. So it's really hard to go out there and get pumped about it. Now, Devon Achane will be our next RB. With Devon Achane, a running back that drops 50 points this past week, it would be very difficult for me to say not to start him. But at the same time, I can't rank him as some elite level option immediately. Reem Mostert is still the primary running back. It's still a tough matchup going up against Buffalo, and we still ultimately are operating with a limited sample. Now, Jerome Ford, Alexander Madison are both going to be in the same bucket for me. These are both running backs that were great last week. These are both running backs that I'm a little bit worried that their usage may wind down just a bit with the other running backs in their backfields getting more comfortable with the offense and getting worked up to speed this week. You have Kareem Hunt, most likely no longer being on a snap count in Cleveland. And you have Cam Akers in Minnesota going to be active this week. For that reason, I actually like Alexander Madison for fewer than 7.5 total yards over there on Underdog Fantasy this week. But I don't know. You can start them if you want to. I would rather just get to see what they look like with their backfield mates running alongside him. Now, our next two guys will also be in a similar bucket. We're going to have Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers here. And you know what? I'm actually going to move Zay Flowers down. Addison, a great offense, no worries against Carolina. But ultimately, if you are going to be looking at Zay Flowers, really, really tough matchup going up against Cleveland. So let's move him down, even if I am excited about Flowers continuing his role. It's just tough against Cleveland. But George Pickens, 44. Y'all know we had him as a buy low guy back in week 1. Stand by it. Hell, he's crushed ever since. His value has definitely increased. I will say you probably have 2 more weeks where George Pickens is still a player we can start consistently. Once Deontay comes back, then we are going to have to reevaluate with how the target volume changes. Michael Thomas, our next guy, not worried about Jameis Winston in here. The Saints may have to air it out. And with Jameis, we know that this is always a possibility that he throws a couple picks, they get behind, and yes, it is garbage time in the second half. Christian Kirk at 46 is a wide receiver that will move to the top of this tier if Zay Jones is officially ruled out. At the time of this recording, I have not seen any news regarding Zay Jones and his availability this Sunday. If you have no Jones, move Christian Kirk to the very top there at 43. Then we have Jerry Jeudy at 47. With Jeudy, another week removed from the hamstring strain, I think it can continue to go through and progress in this offense. And I do ultimately think he is the wide receiver 1 here and not Courtland Sutton. Zay Flowers, you like him, but like we discussed, really tough matchup going up against Cleveland. And the last guy in this tier will be Javonte Williams. Denver looks horrendous, but they do have an implied team total of almost 25 points going up against the Chicago Bears. I mean, are both teams that pretty much have given up, both teams that look like they're completely out of it. So maybe this game doesn't really have an impact from a real life perspective, but it could impact us in fantasy. Now going over to 50, we will have Tyler Lockett. I like the matchup going up against the Giants. I mean, they are favored over New York. They have about a 23-point implied team total. And Lockett obviously is always one of these wide receivers that can randomly pop off. I am just looking out for JSN when he finally expands his role. Jalen Warren, Najee Harris going to be our next two guys. Good matchup against the Texans, but at the same time with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris, it's a 50-50 backfield split where it is very difficult to be excited about this Pittsburgh offense overall. DJ Moore, our next guy, 53. I mean, the offense is horrendous, but if you were ever going to see the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields come alive, it's probably going up against the defense that just gave up 70 points. We have Garrett Wilson at 54. I mean, the Jets are going to get behind. The Jets are going to have to throw the ball, but ultimately they have an implied team total of 16 points. It doesn't matter if they are going to be trailing by 50 points against the Kansas City Chiefs this week. At the end of the day, Zach Wilson is not a top 50 quarterback in the NFL. And it's very hard to rely on Zach Wilson, even if he's a stud. We will have Chris Godwin, Jacoby Myers as our next two guys. And we'll throw in Tutu Atwell, Terry McLaurin here as well. I mean, this last tier, it's very difficult to rank these players because the range of outcomes is all pretty similar. I mean, they all have incredibly low floors. I mean, if you're playing in a full BBR format, maybe you bump Jacoby Myers up a little bit more. The issue, at least right now with Myers, is Jimmy Garoppolo not at practice, and we don't know if he is for sure getting Jimmy G this Sunday. But I think that's all I have for y'all in this video. Like I said, I'm going to be live streaming every single day for the rest of the season, so make sure that you are subscribed, and we'll be giving you all the injury updates that you have. And of course, if you want to check out any of those pick'ems over on Underdog Fantasy this weekend, you can find that link in the description, find in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $500 on Underdog Fantasy. Plus, you're going to be getting our updated rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers, and a Kenny Pickett special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard going up against the Houston Texans this Sunday. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you with the live stream later tonight.